Marcus Chen sat on the park bench, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he counted the crumpled bills in his wallet for the third time that morning. $12.37. That was all that stood between him and another sleepless night wondering how he'd pay next week's rent. Little did he know that in less than an hour, a broken kite and a crying child would change everything. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness would catch the attention of someone who could transform his entire world. Someone whose luxury sedan was already pulling into the parking lot just beyond the oak trees. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Riverside Park as Marcus tucked the meager bills back into his worn leather wallet, the same one his ex-wife Sarah had given him 3 Christmases ago when things were different, when his construction company was thriving and their marriage hadn't yet crumbled under the weight of financial stress and broken promises. Now, 6 months after the divorce papers were signed and his business had folded, Marcus found himself coming to this park every Saturday morning. Not because he had anywhere else to be, but because the alternative was sitting alone in his studio apartment, staring at the stack of overdue bills on his kitchen table. The park was unusually quiet for a weekend morning, with only a few joggers making their rounds on the paved trail that wound through the maple trees. Marcus had always been an early riser, a habit formed during his years in construction when job sites opened before dawn. But these days, he woke early because sleep had become elusive, interrupted by anxiety dreams about eviction notices and empty refrigerators. His daughter Katie lived with Sarah now, and their weekend visits had become increasingly strained as Marcus struggled to provide the kind of experiences an 8-year-old expected from her father. A sharp cry pierced the morning stillness, causing Marcus to look up from his contemplation of the worn bench beneath him. About 50 yards away, near the open field where families often flew kites and played frisbee, a young boy sat in the grass, his shoulders shaking with the kind of sobs that only come from deep disappointment. The child appeared to be around 6 or 7 years old, with tousled brown hair and a bright red jacket that made him stand out against the golden autumn grass, like a cardinal in a wheat field. Marcus hesitated for a moment, his natural instinct to help warring with the voice in his head that reminded him he had his own problems to solve. But something about the boy's posture, the way he hunched over whatever lay in his lap, reminded Marcus of Katie during her worst moments, and he found himself standing up and walking toward the child before he made a conscious decision to do so. As he got closer, Marcus could see the source of the boy's distress. A kite lay in pieces around him, its bright yellow fabric torn in several places. One of its wooden cross braces snapped clean in half, and its long tail tangled in a hopeless knot. The kite appeared to have been a beautiful thing once, decorated with hand-painted designs that looked like they might have been the work of a child's careful fingers, now marred by grass stains and tears. "Hey there, buddy," Marcus said softly, crouching down a few feet away from the boy to avoid startling him. "Looks like you've had some trouble with your kite." The boy looked up with tear-streaked cheeks and eyes the color of summer sky, his lower lip still trembling with the effort of trying to control his crying. "It's broken," he said, in a voice that managed to convey both the tragedy of the situation and the acceptance that some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. "The wind was too strong, and it crashed into that tree, and now it's all messed up and I can't fly it anymore." Marcus glanced toward the large oak tree the boy was pointing at, its branches still holding a few stubborn leaves that rustled in the morning breeze. He could see how it had happened, the sudden gust that had sent the kite careening into the unforgiving wood, the inevitable tangle and tear that followed. "What's your name, son?" "David," the boy replied, wiping his nose on the sleeve of his red jacket. "My mom bought me this kite last weekend, and I was so excited to fly it today. But now it's ruined, and she's going to be so disappointed because it was expensive, and I should have been more careful." The way David spoke, with a vocabulary and cadence that seemed older than his years, reminded Marcus of Katie, who had always been precocious, quick to absorb the anxieties of the adults around her and make them her own. "I don't think your mom will be disappointed in you, David. Sometimes accidents just happen, no matter how careful we are." David shook his head emphatically, fresh tears threatening to spill over. "You don't understand. She works really hard, and she doesn't have time to come to the store again, and this was supposed to be our special thing that we could do together when she's not at work, but now it's broken and everything is ruined. Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same one that struck him whenever Katie talked about the things they couldn't do together because of money, or time, or the complicated logistics of shared custody. He looked more closely at the damaged kite, his construction worker's eye automatically assessing the damage and calculating what it would take to repair it. The wooden frame could be reinforced with some careful splicing. The fabric tiers were small enough to be patched, and the tangled tail was more a matter of patience than skill. "You know what, David?" Marcus said, settling into a more comfortable position on the grass beside the boy. "I think this kite might not be as broken as it looks. I fixed a lot of broken things in my time, and this one seems like it wants to fly again." David's eyes widened, with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Really? You think you can fix it?" "I think we can fix it together," Marcus corrected, already mentally cataloging the supplies he had in his truck parked nearby. "I've got some things in my toolbox that might help, and if we work together, we might just get this kite back in the air today." The transformation that came over David's face was like watching the sun break through storm clouds, hope replacing despair with the swift intensity that only children could manage. "You would really help me? Even though you don't know me?" Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in weeks. "That's what people do for each other, David. We help fix what's broken." 20 minutes later, Marcus had spread the contents of his emergency repair kit across a small blanket he kept in his truck. The tools and supplies laid out with the methodical precision that had once made him one of the most reliable contractors in the city. He had electrical tape in 3 different colors, a small assortment of wooden coffee stirrers he'd collected from various fast food restaurants, some heavy-duty thread, a tube of fabric glue that had somehow survived in his glove compartment for 2 years, and most importantly, a roll of clear packing tape that would serve as their primary weapon against the kite's wounds. David watched with fascination as Marcus examined each piece of the broken kite, turning the wooden frame over in his hands and testing the strength of the joints that had survived the crash. "The good news," Marcus announced, "is that the main structure is still sound. This crosspiece here," he indicated the snapped wooden strut, "is the main casualty, but we can splice it back together stronger than it was before." "How do you know so much about fixing things?" David asked, his earlier tears completely forgotten as he leaned in to watch Marcus work. "It's my job," Marcus replied, then caught himself. "Well, it was my job. I used to build things, houses and buildings, and when you build things, you also have to know how to fix things when they break. Don't you build things anymore?" The question hit Marcus with unexpected force, reminding him of conversations with Katie that followed similar patterns. Her innocent inquiries about why Daddy didn't go to work every day anymore, why he lived in a different house now, why everything seemed to have changed all at once. "Not right now," he said carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups have to take breaks from their jobs to figure out what comes next." David nodded solemnly, as if this explanation made perfect sense to him. "My mom works all the time. She says she has to because she's responsible for lots and lots of people. But sometimes I wish she could take a break too, so we could do more stuff together." Marcus began the delicate process of splicing the broken wooden strut, using 2 coffee stirrers as splints and wrapping them carefully with electrical tape to create a joint that would be both flexible and strong. "What kind of work does your mom do?" "She makes toys," David said proudly. "She's in charge of a whole company that makes toys for kids all over the world. She travels a lot for meetings and stuff, but she always brings me back something cool from wherever she goes." As Marcus worked, he found himself genuinely curious about this boy's life, so different from his own childhood memories of a mother who cleaned office buildings at night and a father who drove a delivery truck. The careful way David spoke about his mother's work suggested a child who had learned to be proud of something he didn't fully understand, a dynamic Marcus recognized from his own daughter's attempts to explain his construction projects to her friends. "That sounds like important work," Marcus said, beginning to apply fabric glue to the torn sections of the kite's yellow surface. "Making toys that make kids happy is pretty special." "Yeah, but sometimes I think she forgets that playing with toys is supposed to be fun," David said with the matter-of-fact honesty that children wielded like a scalpel. She talks about focus groups and market research and profit margins, but she doesn't really play with the toys herself, you know? Marcus paused in his repair work, struck by the wisdom hidden in David's observation. What do you mean? Like, when she brings home a new toy for me to try, she watches me play with it and takes notes on her phone about what I'm doing. But she doesn't just sit down and play with me. She's always thinking about work stuff, even when we're supposed to be having fun together. The picture David was painting reminded Marcus of his own worst moments as a father, the times when he'd been so preoccupied with business concerns that he'd missed the simple pleasure of being present with Katie. Maybe your mom just needs someone to remind her how to play, Marcus suggested gently. While the fabric glue dried, Marcus turned his attention to the kite's tangled tail, a long streamer made of colorful fabric strips that had somehow managed to knot itself into what looked like an impossible puzzle. David watched with growing amazement as Marcus patiently worked through each tangle, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle as they coaxed each loop and twist back into order. How do you know how to do that? David asked. It looks like magic. Marcus chuckled, the sound surprising him with its warmth. Not magic, just patience. When you work with your hands every day, you learn that most problems can be solved if you're willing to take your time and really look at what's going wrong. My mom says she doesn't have time to take her time, David said thoughtfully. She says everything has to happen fast because business moves fast. Sometimes that's true, Marcus agreed, carefully separating two particularly stubborn knots. But some things, the important things, they can't be rushed. They need time and attention to be done right. As if to prove his point, the final knot in the kite's tail suddenly gave way, and the colorful streamer fell free and straight, its fabric strips fluttering in the gentle breeze like prayer flags. David clapped his hands together in delight, the sound pure and joyful in the quiet morning air. You did it. You actually fixed it. We fixed it, Marcus corrected, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. You helped by being patient and keeping me company while I worked. The final step was reinforcing the repaired areas with clear packing tape, creating patches that were not only functional but somehow added to the kite's character rather than detracting from it. Marcus worked with the focused attention he'd once brought to finish carpentry, ensuring that each piece of tape was smooth and secure, that every repair would hold up to the stress of flight. When they were finished, the kite looked different than it had when David first brought it to the park, but it didn't look broken anymore. The tape patches caught the sunlight like silver scales, the reinforced wooden frame seemed sturdier than before, and the untangled tail moved with a fluid grace that suggested it was eager to dance in the wind again. It's even better than it was before, David breathed, running his small fingers along the repaired edges with reverent care. It's like you gave it superpowers or something. Marcus felt a pride in the repair that surprised him with its intensity. A feeling he hadn't experienced since the early days of his construction career, when completing a challenging project had felt like a genuine accomplishment rather than just another job to be finished. Should we see if it flies? The next 20 minutes were pure magic. The kite took to the air as if it had been waiting its whole existence for this moment, climbing steadily into the blue October sky, with David's delighted laughter providing a soundtrack to its ascent. Marcus held the string spool while David ran beneath the soaring kite, his arms spread wide, as if he too might take flight at any moment. Look how high it's going, David shouted, his voice carrying across the empty field like a bell. It's like it's dancing up there. Marcus watched the boy's uninhibited joy with a mixture of happiness and longing, remembering similar moments with Katie that seemed both recent and impossibly distant. There was something about a child's pure delight that could transform even the most ordinary moment into something transcendent. And he found himself genuinely grateful to be sharing this experience with David, a stranger who had somehow become a friend in the space of an hour. They took turns controlling the kite, Marcus showing David how to work with the wind rather than against it, how to read the subtle changes in air pressure that could send a kite soaring or bring it crashing down. David proved to be a natural, his small hands surprisingly steady on the string, his instinctive understanding of the kite's needs evident in the graceful arcs it traced across the sky under his guidance. You're really good at this, Marcus observed, as David executed a particularly skillful maneuver that brought the kite swooping low before sending it climbing again. Have you flown kites before? Not really, David admitted, his attention still focused on the dancing yellow shape above them. My mom bought this for me because she thought it would be something we could do together, but we didn't really know how to make it work right. We tried once, but it just kept crashing, so we gave up. Marcus felt a pang of sympathy for David's mother, whoever she was, trying to connect with her son through an activity she didn't understand herself. Maybe next time you fly it together, you can teach her what you learned today. Do you think she'd want to learn? David asked, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice. She's really busy with work stuff, and she might think kite flying is too silly for a grown-up. I don't think there's anything silly about spending time with people you care about, Marcus said firmly. And I bet your mom would love to learn something new from you. As the morning progressed, other families began to arrive at the park, and Marcus became aware that his time with David was probably drawing to a close. He glanced around the field, looking for signs of an approaching parent, but saw no one who seemed to be searching for a missing child. Is your mom coming to pick you up soon? Marcus asked, trying to keep his tone casual despite a growing concern about David's situation. She's supposed to meet me here at 11, David replied, checking a small digital watch on his wrist. She had a conference call this morning, but she said she'd come watch me fly my kite after she was done. Marcus looked at his own watch and realized it was already 10:30. Should we start bringing the kite down so you'll be ready when she gets here? David's face fell slightly, but he nodded with the resigned understanding of a child accustomed to schedules and transitions. Together, they began the careful process of reeling in the kite, Marcus coaching David through the technique of gradually reducing altitude without causing the kite to lose stability and crash. I don't want this to be over, David said as the kite descended toward them. This has been the best morning I've had in a really long time. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. I've had a pretty great time too, buddy. Thank you for letting me help you fix your kite. Thank you for knowing how to fix it, David replied seriously. I thought it was ruined forever, but you made it perfect again. As they packed up the repair supplies and folded the kite carefully for transport, Marcus found himself reluctant to end this unexpected friendship. There had been something healing about the morning's work, about the simple satisfaction of solving a problem and bringing joy to a child who needed it. For a few hours, he had felt useful again, skilled and capable in a way that had nothing to do with bank balances or job applications or the crushing weight of adult responsibilities. Marcus, David said as they walked back toward the parking area, could I ask you something? Of course. Do you have kids? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow, not because it was unexpected, but because it forced him to confront the complicated truth of his current relationship with Katie. I have a daughter, he said carefully. Her name is Katie, and she's 8 years old. Does she like to fly kites? I don't know, Marcus admitted, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. We hadn't flown kites together yet. David stopped walking and looked up at Marcus with the kind of direct, unfiltered gaze that only children could manage. You should fly kites with her. She would probably love it, especially if you taught her the way you taught me. You're probably right, Marcus said, making a mental note to suggest kite flying to Sarah the next time they discussed weekend plans for Katie. Maybe I'll ask her about it. They had reached the edge of the parking area when David suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm and pointed toward a sleek black sedan that was just pulling into a space near the park entrance. That's my mom! Marcus watched as a woman emerged from the driver's seat of the luxury car, her movements quick and purposeful even in this casual setting. She was tall and elegant, dressed in what looked like expensive casual wear, dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than Marcus spent on groceries in a month. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she carried herself with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to being in charge. Mom! David called out, breaking into a run toward the parking area with his repaired kite clutched carefully in his arms. The woman's face transformed when she saw her son, her businesslike expression melting into a smile of genuine warmth and relief. David, how did it go? Were you able to fly your kite? It was amazing, David exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement as he reached his mother. It broke when it crashed into a tree, but Marcus fixed it and now it flies even better than before. For the first time, The woman seemed to notice Marcus approaching behind her son, and he saw her expression shift slightly as she took in his work clothes and weathered appearance. Not with judgment, exactly, but with the cautious assessment of a parent trying to evaluate a stranger who had been spending time with her child. "Marcus helped me fix it, Mom," David continued, oblivious to any adult undercurrents. "He knew exactly what to do, and he taught me how to fly it properly, and we had the best time ever." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," the woman replied, her tone warm toward David while her eyes remained awry, evaluative, as they studied Marcus. "I'm sorry. I don't think we've been introduced. I'm Elena Rodriguez." "Marcus Chen," he replied, extending a hand that he suddenly realized was still slightly stained with adhesive from the kite repair. "I hope you don't mind that I helped David with his kite. He was pretty upset when it got damaged, and I thought I might be able to help." Elena's handshake was firm and professional, but her expression softened as she looked down at David's excited face. "I don't mind at all. In fact, I'm grateful. David has been looking forward to flying this kite all week, and I know he would have been heartbroken if we couldn't get it working." "It wasn't any trouble," Marcus said, feeling awkward under her polite scrutiny. David was great company, and it felt good to fix something that could be fixed. Something in his tone seemed to catch Elena's attention, and she studied his face with a more personal interest. "Are you a teacher? You seem to have a natural way with children." "No, I'm in construction," Marcus replied, then corrected himself. "Well, I was in construction. I'm between jobs at the moment." "Marcus knows how to fix everything," David interjected enthusiastically. "He used tape and sticks and string and made my kite perfect again. And he taught me about patience and taking time to do things right." Elena's eyebrows rose slightly at her son's enthusiastic testimonial. "That sounds like valuable lessons." "Your son is a quick learner," Marcus said, feeling a flush of pride on David's behalf. "And he has good instincts about how to work with the wind. He's a natural kite flyer. Can we show her how it flies, Marcus?" David asked eagerly. "Can we show Mom what you taught me?" Marcus glanced at Elena, unsure whether she had time for such demonstrations. "If your mom has time, I'd be happy to help you show her what you learned." Elena checked her watch, and Marcus could see the internal calculation happening behind her eyes, the eternal struggle between parental desire and professional obligation. "I have about 20 minutes before my next call," she said finally. "I'd love to see what you two accomplished." The next few minutes were a blur of activity as David insisted on demonstrating every technique Marcus had taught him. From the proper way to launch the kite to the subtle string movements that kept it stable in changing wind conditions. Elena watched with an attention that seemed both maternal and professional, asking questions about the repair process and taking what appeared to be mental notes about her son's newfound expertise. "This is remarkable," she said as they watched David successfully execute a complex maneuver that brought the kite diving toward the ground before sending it soaring upward again. "I've never seen him so confident with a prass." "Physical activity. He's got natural coordination," Marcus observed. "And more importantly, he's not afraid to make mistakes and learn from them." Elena glanced at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "Well, when we started, he was devastated that the kite was broken. He thought it was ruined forever, and he was worried about disappointing you. But once we started working on fixing it together, he got excited about the process, not just the result." "The process," Eleanor repeated thoughtfully, as if the word held some special significance for her. "Yeah, the trial and error, the problem solving, the satisfaction of making something work that was broken before." David really got into that part of it. They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching David guide his repaired kite through increasingly ambitious aerial maneuvers, his face glowing with concentration and joy. "Mr. Chen," Elena said finally, her tone taking on a slightly more formal quality. "Would you mind if I asked you a personal question?" Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness. "Sure." "You mentioned that you're between jobs in construction. What kind of construction work did you do?" "I had my own company," Marcus replied, surprised by the question. "Residential mostly. Some light commercial. Custom homes, renovations, that sort of thing." "And you're not doing that anymore because—" Marcus hesitated, unsure how much of his personal situation to share with this elegant stranger. The economy got tough, materials costs went up, clients started backing out of projects. I had to close the business about 6 months ago. Elena nodded sympathetically. I'm sorry to hear that. It must have been difficult. It was, Marcus admitted. Still is, honestly. But days like today remind me that there are other ways to feel useful, other problems to solve. Something in Elena's expression shifted, a look of keen interest replacing polite sympathy. Other problems to solve, she repeated. Like broken kites. Like broken kites, Marcus agreed. And little boys who think broken things can't be fixed. Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching her son with an intensity that suggested she was seeing something new in his confident handling of the kite. Mr. Chen, this might sound like an unusual question, but would you be interested in having coffee sometime? I mean, a business coffee. I think there might be some things we could discuss that would be mutually beneficial. Marcus felt a surge of confusion. I'm not sure I understand. I work in the toy industry, Elena explained. And what I've witnessed here today, the way you approached fixing David's kite, the lessons you taught him about patience and problem solving, the pride he's showing in something he helped repair rather than something that was simply given to him. It's all very relevant to some challenges we're facing in our industry. I don't know anything about toys, Marcus protested. But you know about fixing things, Elena countered. And you know about the satisfaction that comes from solving problems with your hands and your creativity. That's exactly the kind of perspective we need. Before Marcus could respond, David came running back to them, his face flushed with exertion and excitement. Did you see that last part, Mom? Did you see how I brought it down and then made it go back up again? I saw everything, sweetheart, Eleanor replied, her voice warm with genuine pride. You were amazing. It's because Marcus taught me the right way to do it, David said generously. He says that most problems can be solved if you're willing to take your time and really look at what's going wrong. Elena's eyes met Marcus's over David's head, and he saw something that looked like recognition in her gaze. That sounds like very wise advice. Can Marcus come fly kites with us again next weekend? David asked hopefully. I want to show him some new tricks I'm going to practice this week. Elena hesitated for just a moment before responding. I think that might be possible, if Mr. Chen is available. Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his chest at the invitation, but also a nagging uncertainty about Elena's business proposal. I'd like that, he said carefully, but I'm still not sure what kind of business we might have to discuss. Let's just say that your approach to fixing broken things might be exactly what our company needs right now, Eleanor replied cryptically. Are you free for coffee tomorrow afternoon? As they exchanged contact information and made tentative plans, Marcus found himself wondering what he had stumbled into. A few hours ago, he had been sitting alone on a park bench, counting his last few dollars and wondering how he was going to make rent. Now he was making plans to have coffee with a toy company executive who seemed to think his kite repair skills had business applications. I should warn you, Elena said as they prepared to part ways. I tend to think big when I see something that interests me. Tomorrow's coffee might lead to some unexpected opportunities. I'm not sure I'm in a position to take on anything too ambitious right now, Marcus replied honestly. Sometimes the best opportunities come when we're least prepared for them, Elena said with a smile. And sometimes, what looks like a small act of kindness turns out to be the beginning of something much larger. As Marcus watched Elena and David drive away, the repaired kite safely stowed in the back seat of their luxury sedan, he tried to make sense of the morning's events. He had come to the park with $12 in his wallet and a growing sense of desperation about his future. He was leaving with the same financial situation but with something that felt infinitely more valuable. A reminder that he had skills and instincts that could make a difference in someone's life. Even if that someone was a 6-year-old boy with a broken kite. The drive back to his apartment was filled with questions about what Elena might want to discuss. But Marcus found himself more curious about David than about potential business opportunities. There had been something in the boy's enthusiasm about the repair process that reminded Marcus of his own childhood fascination with taking things apart and putting them back together. The deep satisfaction that came from understanding how things worked and why they sometimes didn't. That evening, Marcus called his ex-wife Sarah to arrange his next visit with Katie, and found himself describing the morning's events with an enthusiasm that seemed to surprise them both. "You fixed a stranger's kite?" Sarah asked, her tone carrying a mixture of affection and concern that he remembered from their better days. "It wasn't that big a deal," Marcus replied. "The kid was upset, and I had the tools to help." It felt good to solve a problem that actually had a solution. "Maybe you should think about doing more of that kind of thing," Sarah suggested gently. "You always were happiest when you were fixing things for people." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe there are other ways to use your skills than just traditional construction work. You have this gift for seeing how things can be repaired or improved, and for explaining complicated processes in ways that make sense to people. Maybe it's time to think outside the box about what comes next." That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about Sarah's words and about the unexpected coffee invitation from Elena Rodriguez. He tried to imagine what a toy company executive might want to discuss with an unemployed contractor, but every scenario he constructed seemed implausible. More than that, he found himself thinking about David's joy in the repaired kite. The way the boy had embraced the idea that broken things could be made better with patience and creativity. Sunday morning arrived gray and rainy, matching Marcus's mood as he prepared for his coffee meeting with Elena. He had chosen his best casual shirt and spent extra time making sure his appearance was neat and professional. But he still felt out of his depth as he walked into the upscale cafe Elena had suggested. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a quarter table with a laptop open and a stack of papers beside her coffee cup. She looked every inch the successful executive, but when she saw him approaching, her smile was warm and genuine. "Thank you for coming," she said, as he took the seat across from her. "I wasn't sure you would. I have to admit, I'm curious about what this is all about," Marcus replied, accepting the coffee she had already ordered for him. Elena closed her laptop and leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. "Let me start by telling you a little bit about what I do. I'm the CEO of Imagination Studios. We're one of the largest toy manufacturers in North America." Marcus felt his eyebrows rise. He wasn't particularly familiar with toy companies, but even he recognized the name from commercials and store displays. "That's a big company." "It is," Elena agreed. "And like most big companies, we sometimes lose sight of what's really important. We get so focused on market research and focus groups and profit margins that we forget what actually makes children happy." "David mentioned something about that yesterday," Marcus said carefully. Elena's expression grew pained. "David is probably my harshest critic when it comes to the disconnect between what we produce and what actually engages children. He's right that I spend more time analyzing play than participating in it." She paused to take a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "Yesterday, watching you work with David on that kite repair, seeing his excitement about the process of fixing something rather than just having something new, it crystallized something I've been thinking about for months, which is, our industry has become obsessed with planned obsolescence, with creating toys that are disposable, that break easily so children will want the next new thing. But what David experienced yesterday, the satisfaction of repairing something, of understanding how it works, of making it better than it was before, that's a completely different kind of engagement." Marcus was beginning to see where this might be heading, but he still wasn't sure how he fit into the picture. "You want to make toys that can be repaired?" "I want to make toys that are designed to be repaired," Elena corrected. "Toys that come with the tools and materials children need to fix them when they break. Toys that encourage problem-solving and creativity and patience. Toys that teach kids that broken things can be made beautiful again." The idea was intriguing, but Marcus still felt lost. "That sounds like a great concept, but I don't understand what you need from me." Elena smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked less like a corporate executive and more like an excited parent. "I need someone who understands how things break and how they can be fixed. Someone who can think creatively about solutions using simple materials. Someone who can teach children that the process of repair can be as satisfying as the end result." "You want me to design toys?" "I want you to consult on a new product line we're developing. It's still in the early conceptual stages, but the basic idea is a series of toys that are specifically designed to be taken apart, modified, and rebuilt. construction sets, but not like anything that's currently on the market. Marcus felt a flutter of excitement despite his confusion. What makes them different? Elena opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him, showing what appeared to be preliminary design sketches for various building sets. Instead of perfect pieces that only fit together one way, these sets would include components that are intentionally imperfect, pieces that require creativity and problem-solving to make work together. Pieces that need to be fixed, Marcus said, beginning to understand. Exactly. And instead of instruction manuals that show one correct way to build something, we'd provide repair guides that teach children how to approach problems creatively, how to use simple materials to create solutions. The more Elena explained her vision, the more excited Marcus became. This wasn't just about toys. It was about teaching children the same satisfaction he had felt yesterday helping David repair his kite, the deep pleasure that came from taking something broken and making it whole again. It sounds amazing, he said honestly, but I still don't understand what qualifies me to help with something this sophisticated. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying his face with the same evaluative look she had given him in the park. Yesterday, you took a broken kite and fixed it using materials you happened to have in your truck. But more than that, you turned a child's disappointment into excitement about the process of repair itself. You didn't just fix David's kite, you taught him that broken things have potential, that problems can be opportunities for creativity. Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks at the praise, but also a growing sense of possibility. You really think there's a market for toys that are designed to break? Not designed to break, Elena corrected. Designed to be imperfect, to require creative problem solving. There's a huge difference. What we're talking about is getting children the tools and confidence to be fixers and creators, not just consumers. They spent the next hour discussing the practical aspects of Elena's vision, and Marcus found himself contributing ideas with a fluency that surprised him. His years of construction experience had given him an intuitive understanding of how things failed and how they could be reinforced. Knowledge that translated perfectly to Elena's concept of toys that encouraged active engagement rather than passive consumption. I have to ask, Marcus said as their conversation began to wind down, why me? You could hire professional toy designers, engineers, people with credentials in child development. Elena was quiet for a long moment, absently turning her coffee cup in her hands. Do you know what David said to me on the drive home yesterday? Marcus shook his head. He said that Marcus was the first grown-up who ever made fixing something seem more fun than breaking it. He said you made him feel like he was smart and capable, not just a kid who needed to be careful with his toys. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, carrying with them an echo of every conversation he'd ever had with Katie about being more careful, more responsible, more aware of the cost of things. I didn't realize I had done anything special. That's exactly why you're the right person for this project, Elena said firmly. You don't see helping children as work or as a teaching opportunity. You see it as a natural part of being human. That authenticity is something we can't manufacture or fake. As they prepared to leave the cafe, Elena pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is my direct number, she said, handing it to Marcus. I'd like you to think about what we discussed today. If you're interested, I'd like to set up a meeting with our development team later this week. What exactly would the job involve? Marcus asked, still trying to wrap his head around the possibility. Initially, consulting on the design and development of our first repair-focused toy line. If things go well, we'd be looking at a full-time position heading up a new division focused on educational construction toys. Marcus stared at the business card in his hand, the elegant logo of Imagination Studios embossed in gold. This seems too good to be true. The best opportunities usually do, Eleanor replied with a smile. But sometimes the universe puts the right person in the right place at exactly the right time. That evening, Marcus called Sarah to tell her about the job possibility, and for the first time in months, he heard genuine excitement in her voice. Marcus, this sounds perfect for you, she said. You've always been happiest when you're teaching someone how to build something or fix something. And the fact that it involves helping children learn those same skills, it's like it was designed specifically for you. It feels too big, Marcus admitted. 6 months ago, I was running a small construction company, and now I'm being offered a chance to help design toys for a major corporation. What if I'm not smart enough or creative enough for something like this? What if you are? Sarah countered. What if all those years of solving problems on job sites and teaching apprentices and figuring out how to make things work with whatever materials you had available, what if all of that was preparing you for exactly this opportunity? The following Tuesday, Marcus found himself in the sleek corporate offices of Imagination Studios, sitting around a conference table with Elena and 3 other executives as they outlined their vision for the new product line. The meeting was unlike anything he had ever experienced. A fast-paced exchange of ideas and possibilities that left him feeling both energized and overwhelmed. The key insight, explained Dr. Sarah Winters, the company's head of child development research, is that children learn more from fixing things than from building things according to predetermined instructions. When they have to problem solve and improvise, they develop critical thinking skills and confidence in their own abilities. But how do we make that commercially viable? Asked James Morrison, the head of marketing. Parents buy toys that they think will keep their children occupied and happy. How do we convince them to buy toys that are intentionally challenging? By showing them what their children are capable of when they're given the right tools and encouragement, Eleanor replied. Marcus, yesterday, you transformed my son's relationship with problem-solving in the space of 2 hours. David went from thinking his broken kite was a disaster to feeling proud of his ability to repair and improve it. All eyes turned to Marcus, and he felt the familiar flutter of nervousness that came with being the center of attention. I think kids are naturally drawn to taking things apart and putting them back together, he said carefully. We just don't usually give them permission to do it, or the tools to do it safely and successfully. Exactly, Elena said enthusiastically. What if they created a line of construction toys that came with a fix-it kit alongside the building materials? Simple tools, adhesive patches, replacement parts, and most importantly, guides that teach children how to approach repair as a creative challenge rather than a frustrating obstacle. The more they discussed the concept, the more excited Marcus became about the possibilities. They were talking about creating toys that would teach children the same satisfaction he had discovered in construction work. The deep pleasure of taking raw materials and creating something functional and beautiful. I keep thinking about the kite, Marcus said during a brief pause in the conversation. When David first saw it broken, he thought it was ruined. But once we started working on it together, he began to see the damage as puzzle pieces that needed to be solved. The tears in the fabric became opportunities to add reinforcing patches. The broken wooden strut became a chance to create a joint that was stronger than the original. That's the mindset shift we want to encourage, Dr. Winters agreed. Moving children from a scarcity mentality, where broken things are losses, to an abundance mentality, where broken things are opportunities for creativity and learning. By the end of the meeting, Marcus had agreed to spend the following week working with the design team to develop prototypes for the first products in what they were calling the Fix It Forward line. The salary they offered was more than he had ever made in construction, but more importantly, it represented a chance to do work that felt meaningful and aligned with his natural skills and interests. The next Saturday, Marcus returned to Riverside Park to meet David for their second kite flying session. But this time, he brought along a notebook and a small video camera. Elena had asked him to document David's interaction with various repair challenges, hoping to capture the natural problem-solving process that children engaged in when given the freedom to experiment. Marcus, David called out as soon as he spotted him across the parking area. I've been practicing with my kite all week, and I learned some new tricks. For the next hour, Marcus watched with professional interest as David demonstrated his growing mastery of kite flying. But he was even more intrigued by the boy's approach to the small problems that arose during their session. When the kite's tail became tangled in a tree branch, David didn't panic or immediately ask for help. Instead, he studied the situation carefully, tried several different approaches to freeing the tangled fabric, and ultimately solved the problem using a combination of patience and creative string manipulation. How did you know to try that? Marcus asked, as David successfully freed the kite without damaging either the tail or the tree. I remembered what you said about taking time to really look at what's going wrong, David replied matter-of-factly. I could see that pulling harder wasn't going to work, so I had to figure out how to make the branch let go of the tail, instead of trying to make the tail get away from the branch. Marcus made a note in his notebook about David's problem-solving approach, but more than that, he felt a deep satisfaction in seeing the boy apply the lessons from their first meeting to a new challenge. This was exactly the kind of transferable learning that Elena's toy line was designed to encourage. When Elena arrived to pick up David, she found them both sitting on the grass, surrounded by the components of a small repair kit Marcus had assembled for testing purposes. David was intently focused on reassembling a wooden puzzle box that Marcus had intentionally broken in several places, using the tools and materials from the kit to create solutions that were both functional and creative. "How's it going?" Elena asked, settling onto the grass beside them. "David's been helping me test some ideas for the toy line," Marcus explained. "He's got incredible instincts for this kind of problem-solving." "Look, Mom," David said excitedly, holding up the reassembled puzzle box. "Marcus broke this on purpose, so I could practice fixing it. And now it's even cooler than it was before because I added these extra pieces that make it work differently." Elena examined her son's handiwork with genuine amazement. The puzzle box had been transformed from a simple container into a complex mechanical device with moving parts and hidden compartments, all created using the basic repair materials Marcus had provided. "This is incredible, David," she said honestly. "How did you figure out how to add all these new features?" "Marcus taught me that when you're fixing something, you don't have to make it exactly the same as it was before," David explained seriously. "You can make it better, or different, or more interesting. You just have to think about what you want it to do, and then figure out how to make that happen." Elena met Marcus's eyes over David's head, and he saw excitement and gratitude in her expression. "I think we're onto something really important here," she said quietly. The following Monday, Marcus began his new position as senior design consultant for Imagination Studios' Fix It Forward division, working out of a bright, spacious workshop that had been set up specifically for developing the new toy line. His first assignment was to create prototypes for a series of building sets that would incorporate the repair-focused philosophy they had been discussing. Working with a team of industrial designers and child development specialists, Marcus spent the next several weeks developing toys that were intentionally imperfect, construction sets that required creativity and problem-solving rather than simple instruction following. The key innovation was including comprehensive repair kits with every set, complete with tools, materials quote, and guides that taught children how to approach broken or challenging components as opportunities for creative enhancement. The first prototype was a castle building set that came with wooden blocks in various states of intentional damage, along with a fix-it kit containing wood glue, sandpaper, small clamps, decorative materials, and a guidebook that taught basic woodworking repair techniques. Children weren't just building a predetermined castle. They were restoring and improving castle components while learning valuable hands-on skills. The beauty of this approach, Marcus explained to the design team, is that no two children will end up with the same final product. The repair process naturally leads to customization and personal expression. When they tested the prototype with focus groups of children, the results exceeded everyone's expectations. Instead of losing interest once the initial building challenge was complete, children continued to engage with the sets for hours, inventing new repair challenges for themselves and sharing their creative solutions with friends and siblings. "They're not just playing with these toys," Dr. Winters observed during one testing session. "They're developing a completely different relationship with objects and problems. They're seeing challenges as interesting rather than frustrating." The success of the initial prototypes led to rapid expansion of the Fix It Forward line, with Marcus working on everything from electronic circuit sets that taught basic electrical repair to textile kits that introduced children to sewing and fabric restoration. Each set was designed around the same piece core philosophy: getting children the tools and confidence to see broken or imperfect things as opportunities for creativity and learning. 6 months after his chance encounter with David in the park, Marcus found himself standing in front of a packed auditorium at the annual Toy Industry Innovation Conference, preparing to give a presentation about the Fix It Forward line to an audience of industry executives and media representatives. The inspiration for this product line came from a very simple observation. He began, his initial nervousness giving way to genuine enthusiasm for his subject. Children are naturally drawn to taking things apart and putting them back together. But our industry has trained them to see broken toys as failures rather than opportunities. He clicked to the first slide of his presentation, which showed before and after photos of David's repaired kite. This kite belonged to a 6-year-old boy who thought his toy was ruined when it crashed into a tree. But with some basic materials and a little guidance, that broken kite became something better than it had been originally. More importantly, the process of repairing it taught him skills and confidence that he's continued to apply to other challenges. The presentation was a huge success, with several major retailers placing advance orders for the Fix-It Forward line before Marcus had even finished speaking. But more satisfying than the commercial success was the response from parents and educators who recognized the deeper value of what they were trying to accomplish. "You're not just selling toys," one conference attendee told Marcus afterward. "You're teaching children that they have the power to fix what's broken in the world around them. That's a pretty profound gift." As the conference wound down, Marcus found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him to this moment. A year ago, he had been sitting on a park bench, counting his last few dollars and wondering if he would ever feel useful again. Now, he was heading up a division of one of the largest toy companies in the world, doing work that felt both financially rewarding and personally meaningful. But the most satisfying moment came the following Saturday, when he returned to Riverside Park for his weekly kite flying session with David. The boy had grown more confident and creative over the months they had been meeting, and their sessions had evolved into collaborative workshops where they tackled increasingly complex repair and modification challenges together. "Marcus, look what I brought today," David called out as he ran toward the familiar bench where they always met. He was carrying a small wooden airplane that appeared to have been assembled from parts of several different kits, with modifications and repairs that showed both creativity and technical skill. "Did you build this yourself?" Marcus asked, examining the aircraft with genuine admiration. "I built it, and Mom helped," David replied proudly. "We used 3 different Fix-It kits and some extra materials, and we worked on it together for, quote, 2 whole evenings. Mom says she's learning almost as much as I am about how to fix things and make them better." Marcus looked up to see Elena approaching from the parking area, her face glowing with the same pride and excitement that David was showing. "He's become quite the engineer," she said as she joined them. "Our house is full of projects now, things we're building and rebuilding and improving together." "That was always the goal," Marcus replied, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the autumn sunshine. "Teaching kids that they can be makers and fixers, not just consumers." "You've done more than that," Elena said seriously. "You've reminded all of us that the most important things in life, relationships, confidence, creativity, they all get stronger when we take the time to repair them properly." As they prepared David's airplane for its maiden flight, Marcus reflected on the unexpected path that had led him to this moment. He had started as a man who fixed buildings, evolved into someone who fixed toys, and somehow, along the way, had discovered that his real gift was fixing the places where people connected with each other and with their own creative potential. The airplane soared beautifully on its first launch, a testament to the collaborative problem-solving that had gone into its construction. David cheered with delight, Elena applauded with genuine enthusiasm, and Marcus felt the deep satisfaction that came from work that mattered, relationships that enriched everyone involved, and the knowledge that broken things, given patience and creativity and care, could indeed be made more beautiful than they had ever been before. Later that evening, as Marcus sat in his new apartment, much larger and brighter than the studio he had been forced to move to after his business failed, he opened his laptop to work on the design specifications for the next wave of Fix-It Forward products. But before he began, he took a moment to look at the framed photo on his desk. David and Katie, meeting for the first time the previous weekend, collaborating on a complex building project with the focused intensity the children brought to work they found genuinely engaging. The two children had bonded immediately over their shared interest in taking things apart and putting them back together in new and interesting ways. and Marcus had been struck by how naturally they had fallen into a collaborative problem-solving rhythm. Katie, who had initially been skeptical about her father's new career, had become one of the most enthusiastic testers of fix-it-forward prototypes, bringing her 8-year-old perspective to design challenges that often stumped the adult development team. "Daddy, this doesn't make sense," she had told him the previous week while testing a mechanical puzzle box. "If kids are supposed to fix this when it breaks, why would you make the breaking part so complicated? We need to understand what went wrong before we can figure out how to make it right." Her feedback had led to a complete redesign of the product, with breakpoints that were more intuitive and repair processes that taught clear cause-and-effect relationships. It was exactly the kind of insight that kept Marcus excited about his work. The reminder that children often saw solutions that adults missed because they weren't limited by preconceptions about how things were supposed to work. As he worked on the new product specifications, Marcus found his mind drifting back to that first morning in the park, when he had been an unemployed contractor with $12 in his wallet and David had been a little boy crying over a broken kite. Neither of them could have imagined the chain of events that simple repair job would set in motion. The way that one act of practical kindness would ripple outward to affect not just their own lives, but the lives of countless children who would benefit from toys designed to teach them that broken things could be made beautiful again. The Fix It Forward line had become more than just a commercial success. It had sparked a broader conversation about the values embedded in children's toys and the kinds of relationships those toys encouraged. Parents reported that their children were more patient with challenges, more creative in their problem-solving, and more confident in their ability to tackle difficult tasks. Teachers noted that students who played with fix-it-forward toys showed increased persistence and collaboration skills in classroom settings. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus had discovered that the principles that made the toys successful applied equally well to adult relationships and challenges. Elena had become not just his boss, but a genuine friend, someone whose initial business proposition had evolved into a collaborative partnership that brought out the best in both of them. Sarah had remarked that Marcus seemed happier and more confident than he had been in years, and their co-parenting relationship had improved dramatically as Marcus's financial stress decreased and his sense of purpose returned. "You know what I think happened?" Sarah had told him during one of their recent conversations about Katie's weekend plans. "I think you stopped trying to build a life that looked like what you thought success was supposed to look like and started building a life that actually fit who you are. And that's made all the difference." As Marcus finished his work for the evening and prepared for bed, he reflected on the truth of Sarah's observation. His construction business had been successful by conventional measures, but it had never felt like an authentic expression of his deepest interests and abilities. The fix-it-forward work, on the other hand, utilized all of his technical skills while also engaging his natural desire to teach and help others discover their own capabilities. The next morning brought news that the Fix It Forward line had been selected as Toy of the Year by the International Toy Industry Association, an honor that would bring significant additional exposure and sales opportunities. But as Marcus read the congratulatory messages flooding his inbox, he found himself thinking not about market expansion or profit margins, but about David's excitement when he had successfully repaired his first broken toy, about Katie's pride when she had solved a design problem that had stumped the adult engineers, about Elena's joy in discovering that she could be both a successful executive and an engaged, playful parent. The real success of the Fix It Forward line wasn't measured in units sold or awards won, but in the countless moments of connection and discovery it had facilitated between parents and children, between problems and solutions, between what was broken and what could be made whole again. Marcus had learned that the most profound repairs weren't about fixing objects, but about fixing the relationships between people and their own creative potential, between children and their confidence in their ability to solve problems, between families and their capacity for collaborative play and learning. As he prepared to leave for another day at Imagination Studios, Marcus paused at his front door to look back at his apartment, transformed from the sparse, anxious space it had been a year ago into a warm home filled with prototypes and projects, photos of Katie and David working together, and the comfortable clutter of a life lived with purpose and passion. It wasn't the life he had planned or expected, But it was the life that fit him perfectly, built from the pieces of what had been broken and reassembled into something better than what had come before. The morning commute to Imagination Studios took Marcus through the same route that passed Riverside Park, and he often found himself glancing toward the open field where he had first met David and discovered that helping someone fix a broken kite could change the trajectory of multiple lives. The park looked different now in different seasons and weather, but it remained a symbol of possibility, of the way that simple acts of kindness and creativity could ripple outward in ways that no one could predict or control. At the office, Marcus was greeted by the usual bustle of a successful product launch, with phone calls from retailers, interviews with toy industry publications, and meetings with the international distribution team, who were working to bring fix-it-forward products to markets around the world. But the most meaningful part of his day came during the regular testing sessions with local families, where he got to observe children discovering the joy of creative problem-solving firsthand. "The thing I love most about these toys," one parent told him during a feedback session, "is that they've changed the way my daughter approaches challenges in general. She used to get frustrated and give up when something didn't work the first time, but now she gets excited about figuring out what went wrong and how to fix it." That evening, Marcus received a text message from Elena asking if he could join her and David for dinner the following weekend. "David has a surprise he wants to show you," the message read, "and I have some exciting news about the international expansion of Fix It Forward that I'd like to discuss." As Marcus typed his acceptance of the dinner invitation, he found himself marveling once again at the unexpected directions his life had taken. A year ago, the idea of having dinner at the home of a toy company CEO would have seemed absurd, but now Elena and David felt like family, people whose lives had become intertwined with his own in ways that enriched everyone involved. The dinner the following Saturday was held in Elena's elegant but comfortable home, a space that reflected both her professional success and her commitment to creating an environment where David could explore his interests safely and creatively. The surprise David wanted to share turned out to be a complex mechanical sculpture he had built using components from multiple fix-it-forward sets, combined with materials he had gathered from around the house and neighborhood. "I call it the problem-solving machine," David announced proudly as he demonstrated the sculpture's various moving parts. "You put a broken toy in one end, and it has all these different stations where you can try different ways to fix it, and then it comes out the other end either fixed or turned into something completely new." Marcus examined the sculpture with genuine amazement, recognizing advanced engineering principles in David's intuitive design. "This is incredible, David. How did you figure out how to make all these mechanical systems work together?" "I just kept trying different things until I found combinations that worked," David replied matter-of-factly. "And when something didn't work the first time, I tried to figure out what was going wrong and how to make it better." Elena watched the interaction between Marcus and her son with obvious satisfaction. "David's teacher says he's become the go-to problem solver in his class," she said. When other kids have challenges with projects or assignments, they ask David for help because he's so good at breaking problems down into manageable pieces. The conversation over dinner ranged from David's latest creative projects to Elena's plans for expanding the Fix It Forward line into educational markets. But the underlying theme was the continuing evolution of relationships and opportunities that had grown from that first chance encounter in the park. Elena had been promoted to president of global operations for Imagination Studios, partly on the strength of the Fix It Forward success, and she was now in a position to implement the repair-focused philosophy across the company's entire product line. "We're not just changing the toy industry," she told Marcus as they cleared the dinner dishes together. "We're changing the way children think about their relationship with the material world around them. Instead of seeing themselves as consumers who discard things when they break, they're learning to see themselves as creators who can improve and transform the objects in their lives." End quote. As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself reflecting on the profound changes that had occurred not just in his professional life, but in his sense of identity and purpose. He had begun the year as a failed contractor, someone whose primary skill set seemed obsolete in a changing economy. Now he was a successful consultant and product developer, but more importantly, He was someone who helped children discover their own creative potential and taught families to see challenges as opportunities for collaboration, and learning. The drive home took him past Riverside Park once again, and on impulse, Marcus pulled into the parking area and walked out to the field where he had first met David. The park was quiet in the evening darkness, but he could imagine it as it had been that morning, a year ago, filled with possibility and the sound of a child's tears that had somehow led to joy and healing for everyone involved. Standing in the spot where David had sat with his broken kite, Marcus thought about all the other broken things in the world that could be repaired with patience and creativity and care. Not just toys and mechanical objects, but relationships and dreams, and the confidence that came from knowing that problems could be solved and challenges could be overcome. The fix-it-forward philosophy had taught him that the most important thing about fixing what was broken wasn't the technical skill required, but the willingness to see potential where others saw only damage, to invest time and attention in solutions, rather than accepting defeat. As he walked back to his car, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from Katie. "Dad, I finished the robot we were working on, and I want to show you how I fixed the part that wasn't working right. Can we video chat when you get home?" The message filled Marcus with the same warm satisfaction he had felt that first morning when David's kite had taken flight again, repaired and improved and ready for new adventures. This was what success really looked like, he realized. Not the accumulation of wealth or status, but the building of relationships and experiences that made everyone involved more creative, more confident, and more connected to their own capacity for solving problems and creating beauty in the world around them. The story that had begun with a broken kite and a crying child had become something much larger, a testament to the power of simple kindness and the profound impact that one person's skills and attention could have on the lives of others. Marcus had learned that the most meaningful repairs weren't about returning things to their original state, but about transforming what was broken into something better than it had ever been before. Stronger and more beautiful and more useful than anyone had imagined possible. As he reached his car and prepared for the drive home to another video chat with Katie and another evening of collaborative problem-solving, Marcus smiled at the thought that somewhere in the world, other children were discovering the same joy that David had found in his repaired kite, the same confidence that came from learning that broken things could be made whole again with patience and creativity, and the willingness to see challenges as opportunities for growth and connection. The ripples from that first act of kindness would continue to spread outward, touching lives and changing perspectives in ways that no one could predict or control, but that everyone involved would be grateful to have experienced.